You may be seated. The court is now in session. Ms. Sakolwote, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to this proceeding? Sakolwote. Mr. President, all parties to the proceeding are present except the accused, Ieng Sari, who is present in the holding cell downstairs. He requests to waive his direct presence through his counsel in the proceeding, and that request applies for the whole day. The letter of waiver by the accused has been submitted to the greffier. As for the witness So Sia, she is waiting in the room to be called by the chamber. Thank you. Before I hand the floor to the counsel to put questions to this witness, the chamber will now decide on the request by Ieng Sari. We received the request by Ieng Sari dated 16 August 2012 through his counsel to waive his direct presence in the proceeding today and instead to follow it through audio-visual means. The treating doctor of the accused Ieng Sari at the ECCC detention facility has examined Ieng Sari this morning and observes that Ieng Sari is fatigued during his even small movement. He visits the toilet frequently and cannot sit for long, and he feels dizzy and recommends that he shall follow the proceedings through a remote means from the holding cell downstairs. And as Ieng Sari himself requests to waive his direct presence in the proceeding today due to his health and as observed by the treating doctor, but physically and mentally he could follow the proceedings through a remote means in the holding cell downstairs, and that he can communicate with his defense team directly. The chamber grants the request by the accused Ieng Sari for his waiver of his direct presence in the courtroom and allows him to follow the proceeding remotely from the holding cell downstairs. That applies for the whole day proceeding. Every booth you instructed to link the proceeding to the room downstairs so that Ieng Sari can follow it. I will hand the floor to Judge Cartwright to respond to the request made by the defense counsel for Nuon Chea yesterday regarding the use of document during the questioning time. Judge Cartwright, you may proceed.
Thank you, President. The trial chamber acknowledges the request made by the Nuon Chea defence team yesterday concerning a particular document which it wished to use in examining this witness, and wishes now to try and deal with this matter more specifically. The trial chamber has been unable to identify precisely which document you were referring to, as we don't have the transcript. So it would like you to identify specifically the document that you wish to use and also to advise the chamber whether or not it has been put before the chamber. So can we take that as a first step, please?
Thank you, Judge Cartwright, and good morning to everyone. Of course, we will be able to provide you with those details, and I will do so according to your wishes, either in court or via email. To clarify my request yesterday was not related to this one particular document that we have been asking questions about. The request dealt with all documents that are addressed in this courtroom, because we have noticed that for different parties there seem to be different rules. And I have gone through the transcripts of the hearing of Mr. Soon Sikun, and what I stated yesterday was correct. Not every time that a document is shown to the witness is the witness asked whether or not he has seen that document. And for that reason, the document is not removed from the witness if he has not seen that document immediately. I can give you specific...
Perhaps I can just interrupt you here, because the Chamber acknowledges that this issue needs clarification, and will return to it in more general terms at the trial management meeting tomorrow. But what we are concerned to do today is to clarify the specific document that you wished to address questions to this witness on while the witness is available. So the first point is, has it been put before the Chamber? And bear in mind, we will be returning more generally to the issue of documents tomorrow at the trial management meeting.
Then I understand your request completely. My request yesterday related to all the documents we were not allowed to use during questioning because they were taken away from the witness, and I will provide you with the details of those documents even before the break, if via email or live here in the courtroom according to your wishes. Is that enough clarification? And I can tell you that one of the documents had a E3/something number, and I assume it has been put before the Chamber, but we will provide you with that information. And again, I'll wait for your instructions as to whether you want it to be addressed in the courtroom or via email.
Well, the trial chamber wishes to clarify this issue so that you have the opportunity to put questions based on a document that has been put before the chamber. It will allow you to do this, but first you must satisfy us that these documents, if it be only one document, that document has already been put before the chamber. Then we will allow you some time to address this witness with questions that are relevant, of course, and not repetitious. The usual rules obtain. So the sooner you provide us with that information, the sooner you will be able to ask questions of this witness, if that is appropriate in all the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Cartwright, and I think that is entirely clear, but just from my understanding, and I think it may assist all the parties in this courtroom, do I understand correctly that there is a difference between documents that have been put before the Chamber as such, on the one hand, and documents that are mentioned on one of those lists that have been provided by the parties in April 2011? Because our understanding, and I think everybody's understanding, is that those documents can be used for questioning, and I am not sure whether there is a difference in the eyes of the trial chamber between those documents that have been officially put before the chamber or that are mentioned on these lists. It's not clear to us, and perhaps it's, as we are having this interaction here, it's perhaps a good moment to clarify for all parties.
Well, that more general point will be discussed tomorrow. I'm not sure if it will arise specifically in relation to your request in connection with this witness, and we'll try and deal with it then if it is. But we do not want to go into the more general question because questioning time for witnesses is very precious, and we don't want to deal with that today more broadly. So if you can just satisfy us as to the documents you wish to use in relation to this witness, and of course then go on to ask relevant and not repetitious questions, then we will provide you with that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Cartwright.
President, we will now hand the floor to Ieng Sari's defense to continue posing questions to witness Soong Si-keun. You may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom, and good morning, sir. And might I say to the trial chamber that we are grateful for the clarification and the decision to allow one of us from the defense, and I assume the same thing will be for the prosecution, to revisit issues such as this. Sir, let me pick up where we left off yesterday, and we were talking about funk and grunk, and I was going through your transcript. So now we're back on August 2nd, 2012, when there were some questions posed to you concerning the Khmer Information Agency, which I understand from your testimony from 1970 to 74, you were representing in China and elsewhere. Is that correct?
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, brothers. Good morning, everyone in and around the courtroom. What has been said by the counsel is correct.
Thank you. Now, some questions on this issue. May I ask who exactly appointed you to this position?
Ieng Sari appointed me as the representative of the AKI to China.
And where were you at the time when he appointed you? Where were you physically located when you got the appointment?
At that time, I was at the Metapia Hotel in Beijing. It was part of the compound of the Council of Ministers of the GRUNC.
All right. And if I may ask, how is it that you ended up in Beijing, or Peking, as it was known back then? Because we know that you were a student in Paris. So how is it that you went to Peking?
At that time, I was the president of the Khmer Students' Union in France. And all members of that union supported the appeal made by Prince Norodom Sihanouk, dated the 23rd March 1970, and subsequently I was sent to meet with the Prince, brought along the support letter from all those Khmer students in France in response to the resistance made by the Prince.
And if I may ask, who controlled the Khmer Information Agency? The Prince, the front as a body, Mr. Ieng Sari, who controlled it?
As far as I know, when it comes to the internal resistance, it was the one who controlled that agency. It was not the prince or any of the Cambodians residing abroad.
Well, could the prince use the information agency if he wished? And did he, to your knowledge?
Surely, in his capacity as the chairman of the FUNC, he could use the service of the state under the front within the framework of the resistance of the FUNC.
All right. Now, when you say within the framework, does that mean that his information was censored?
Allow me to say this. The information that I obtained from inside the country I received it through the Vietnamese diplomatic mission in Peking. I did not know how the information was transmitted from within the country to that embassy.
All right. Well, help me out here. At some point, did the king not move to Peking after the coup? Was he not residing there?
No. As far as I know, the prince then was visiting the former Soviet Union, and he learned of the coup d'etat upon his departure from Moscow to Peking, that is to China, and he was informed by the Deputy Prime Minister of the former Soviet Union, if I am not mistaken.
Thereafter, that's what I'm asking you, sir. Thereafter, because you said you were in Peking from 70 to 74. Thereafter, did the prince not move and reside in Peking when he was the head of the front, as you've told us yesterday?
No. On the day I went to Peking, I paid a courtesy to the prince, and I brought along the support letter from the Khmer students in France for the support of the front resistance. He was in Peking then.
Stop you, because I'm asking precise questions, and perhaps it's a matter of translation. I'm asking you, while you were in Peking, because you told us you were there from 70 to 74, during that period, was the king not residing there? And we realize that at times he was traveling, and we'll get to that. But was he not residing there during that period?
I am certain that in between 1970 to 1974, he resided in Peking, and maybe for a period of 1 month, maybe in 1973, he went back to Cambodia in the company of Mr. Ieng Sari.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to confirm from you. And now I'm asking you, because you indicated that you were getting information from inside, and I was asking you questions about the prince and him being able to use the information agency the Khmer Information Agency, which you were responsible for. And so my question is, from the period when the prince was in Peking and you were there, was he able to transmit his messages directly, or did it have to be censored first to make sure that it met within the parameters of whoever it was that was setting the parameters?
I cannot recall that clearly. However, at the time that I was the representative of the AKI, I was also the chairman of the information office in Peking for the front, and if the prince had any message to be broadcast or to be published, then the message would be placed in the weekly bulletin of the AKI. And in fact, the bulletin was published twice per week. But when it comes to the AKI as a whole, I am not sure whether the prince himself had anything to do with the AKI.
Let me move on then to save some time. As I understand your testimony and the testimony of others, you accompanied the prince on his trip to Romania. Do you recall that? This would have been, I believe, sometime in the 70s, early 70s.
Response: Yes, I do. It was in 1973.
All right. And one of the reasons I'm asking is you've indicated that you were also in Bucharest in 94. Was there more than one trip to Romania with the prince, or is there only one trip?
Response: I remember that I went to Romania along with Prince Sihanouk in 1973, and I went back to the country again in 1974 as an assistant to the delegation led by Mr. Khieu Samphan, in which Mr. Ieng Sary was taking part.
All right. The reason I'm asking is because according to David Chandler and according to testimony from another witness who appeared here, On Tong Hong, the trip was in 1974 when Mr. Ieng Sary and the prince were in Bucharest. Is it possible that you have the dates wrong, that it was in 1974 and not 1973?
Response: I do not have it wrong because there are two delegations, one led by then Prince Norodom Sihanouk, and at that time Mr. Khieu Samphan was in country, and it was in 1973, and I don't forget this. I'm clear. In 1974, I returned to Bucharest, Romania, as a person who joined the delegation led from Mr. Khieu Samphan from within the country to the foreign country. I don't know whether other people forget, but I am a great historian and I remember the dates precisely.
All right. And on that trip in 1974, was the prince there along with Mr. Ieng Sary, if you recall?
Response. In 1973, Mr. Ieng Sary also joined.
I'm speaking about 1974. My questions are rather precise and my time is limited. I don't wish to be rude, but I'm asking concrete questions. In 1974, on that trip that you said you went to Bucharest, was Mr. Ieng Sary with Prince Norodom Sihanouk? If you recall. If you don't recall, I'll move on.
Response. Counsel, actually you say you want to save time, but at the same time you're wasting time. Because I was involved in the delegation and Mr. Ieng Sary was with me along with N. Sopiep. So it was in 1973, not 1974. This is what I would like to make it clear.
My question is, was Prince Norodom Sihanouk, was he there along with you? That's the thrust of my question, if you recall.
Response. Counsel, could you please state the year again? Is it in 1973 or you're referring to 1974?
I'm referring to 1974 because we've heard testimony from Untung Hung, who indicated that it was 1974 that he went to Bucharest, where he met the prince and Mr. Ieng Sary, and it's also featured in David Chandler's book. So maybe they have it wrong and you have it right, but I'm merely trying to get that historical fact correct so I can ask my next series of questions.
Response. I stated that in 1974, Mr. Ieng Sary could not be with the prince because he was with the delegation led by Mr. Khieu Samphan, and I was also in that delegation in 1973. It was the time when Mr. Ieng Sary was present along with then Prince Norodom Sihanouk. I hope this message is clear. Whether you believe me or not, or whether you're convinced by the other account, you also may question people at the record in Romania to verify this.
Thank you, sir. Well, let's talk about 1973 then. Do you recall what the message was at the Bucharest meeting in 1973? What Prince Norodom Sihanouk did and said on that meeting?
Response. Mr. President, may I ask counsel to be more specific concerning the meetings, because there were several meetings and I attended only some meetings, not all the meetings. So if he can pinpoint to any particular meeting that I was attending, then it would be helpful.
Did you attend any meetings where Prince Sihanouk was speaking, if you recall?
Response. I recall that on one occasion at Tribunal, it's in Romania, Prince Norodom Sihanouk was interviewed by Henri Cam from the International Tribunal, and I, with Mr. Ieng Sary, were there also. There were Mr. Ieng Sary, Prince Norodom Sihanouk, and I myself were all together at the event when the interview was taking place.
Thank you. Now, setting aside that interview, did you attend any meetings between Prince Sihanouk and, say, the students, the Khmer students that were coming in from Paris to visit?
Response. I wish to respond that when I was in the delegation with the Prince, I was with Mr. Ieng Sari and N. Sopiep.
To my question, no. You weren't present at any meetings?
Response. Mr. President, may I please be allowed to respond not being interrupted because when I giving testimony and being interrupted, I have problem recollect the event. The President, Council, you are now advised to rephrase the questions and to make sure that the questions do not exert any pressure to the witness and allow him to elaborate or respond to the question precisely. And counsels and parties to the proceeding have been fully apprised of already concerning the civil law system or tradition, and that in questioning leading questions should not be allowed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am not asking any leading questions, but I would like permission to cut the witness off if the witness is being non-responsive to my question. But I will rephrase the question. Did you, sir, attend any meetings in Bucharest where Prince Norodom Sihanouk was speaking before the Cambodian students that had come from Paris to see him and the others at the delegation?
Response. I do not recall the meetings or having attended such meetings because it was not in my role to do that. But I wish to also emphasize that I attended meetings when Mr. Ieng Sari received students from France.
Thank you, sir. Now, moving on page 83, but this would be Khmer page 00831427, French 00832814 to 15, in English 00832700. This is again on August 2nd. You answered a question that was posed to you in the following fashion, and I want some clarification. My understanding is that Sihanouk forces were the tactical forces. At the same time, the CPK selected some individuals who could join the party from the beginning until its completion. They were regarded as the tactical forces, but secondary as opposed to the strategic forces. But at the same time, some individuals from the tactical forces could be regarded as the long-term forces for the movement. Now, you did give us an explanation the other day about tactical and strategic, but in this context, can you please explain what you meant by tactical forces versus strategic forces?
Response. Mr. President, I recollect having stated or explained concerning this question. Should I do it again? The President, Council may put another question because the current question is repetitive.
Very well. But for the record, the context is different, but I'll move along. If we now go to same date, Khmer 00831431, French 00832820, English 00832705. Here you were asked a question and you indicated that I went to Vietnam in 1970 in May, accompanying Samdech Norodom Sihanouk when he was the head of the GRUNC to visit Vietnam. Let me stop here. First of all, do you recall making that statement, and do you stand by it?
Response: Yes, I do, and I stand by it.
And can you please tell us what exactly was the purpose of this trip to Vietnam in 1970, if you know?
Response: In May at that time of 1970, the FUNC was just established and the GRUNC was just also established, and the countries that supported both establishments immediately were the People's Republic of China and Vietnam. So it was the prince's obligation to express his thanks to Vietnam for their support and for the Vietnamese authorities and people support of the resistance in Cambodia.
And did you attend any meetings where the prince was speaking?
Response: I don't remember, but I do not recall having attended all the meetings, but I did attend meetings to congratulate or to welcome delegations. I was back then as a representative representing students from France. We have representatives from representative of students from Russia also attended the event.
Okay, thank you. Do you recall whether any tactical or strategic meetings were held, or meetings where tactical and strategic issues were discussed on how the Vietnamese may assist?
Response: I did not attend such meetings to know anything about the content of the meetings. I wish to state that leaders of Vietnam received the prince very warmly and fraternally. During the banquet, Vietnamese singers and musical band played or sang the songs written by the prince. That's what I recollect.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, if we could move on to, again, for clarification purposes, to Khmer 00831437, French 00832826, and English it's 00832711, and I'll be going into 12. Here you're talking about being in charge of international news. This is when you would have been in Hanoi, and you were asked, did Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan give you instructions? And you indicated, it seems none, because it did not fall under their authority. If I could ask, who was giving you instructions to you?
Response. I received direct instructions from Mrs. Ieng Thirit, the person in charge of the voice for the FUNC.
And I note here that you say that you wrote the text and broadcast, and that she would oversee it. Was that based on instructions on what to write, or were you free to write the content, which was then edited and approved?
Response. There was no instruction to write the text because information concerning activities that are supporting the FUNC could be gathered from other sources. So we could select the information, and we had to have it gone through Mrs. Ieng Thirit before it could be broadcast.
And were you part of the process of selecting, combing through the news, selecting, and then collating it into a text for approval?
Response. It is fair to say so. However, Mrs. Ieng Thirit at the same time could also propose pieces of news or information for me to write, because this is the work regime. This is how we could communicate to one another at work.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to another topic, but we're still on August 2nd, 2012, and it's Khmer 00831441, French 00832831, and English 00832716. And I'm going to be referring to this passage in this page and then in another page for clarification. Here you're asked a question: did you know if Pol Pot gave instructions to Ieng Sary, as he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, in relation to the policies of Democratic Kampuchea? And your answer was, no, I do not know. That was the affairs between the two. And then there was another question. This is my last question. Besides Pol Pot, was there any meeting between the senior cadre of Democratic Kampuchea in relation to the foreign policy where Mr. Ieng Sary was the minister? For example, if Mr. Nuon Chea, Khieu Samphan held a meeting in this regard. And your answer is, I do not know. And then you go on to explain. So keeping that in mind, sir, I now want to turn to another passage. This would be from August 6th. 2012. Khmer 00832181 to 82. English 00833251. French 00833134 to 35. Now, you're asked a question here concerning the Standing Committee, and you say, I do not know. I only knew that he was in charge of foreign affairs of the center, he being Mr. Ng Seri. And as for the intellectuals arriving from France, who were the former members of the Marxist-Leninist Circle, he was also responsible for that group as well, including myself. I was part of that group. I also like to clarify the work, quote, responsible, end of quote, or, quote, in charge, end of quote, when I made the statement. He was in charge of us, the intellectuals for the center, that is, for Pol Pot. So Pol Pot also made the decision regarding the appointment for us to go and work here or there. And Ng Seri was the person who directly responsible for us in carrying out the duties. Now, having these two passages in mind, let me begin by asking you, were you ever present at any meetings where Mr. Pol Pot was having conversations with Mr. Ng Seri and the others that were on the Standing Committee or even the Central Committee?
Response: no, I wasn't.
Now, you seem to say that to clarify the words responsible and in charge. And here's where I would like you to add some more clarification. Let me begin by asking you, your position at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who appointed you?
Response: the person who made the decision was Pol Pot, but the proposal was made by Ng Seri. Wherever I should go, the decision was made by Pol Pot. I could elaborate on this at a later date, but for the time being, I would like to be that brief.
Okay. Well, if I could, if we could stay with this topic a little bit. You say that you were proposed by Mr. Ng Seri. How do you know that it was Pol Pot himself that actually appointed you and not the collective?
Response: it is clear that in the Standing Committee of the Central Committee, for example, if other than Pol Pot, who would be the one who decided on appointed me, because Nuon Chea did not know me very well as Pol Pot did. Now, to give you more example, for example, my former wife would like to ask that she be returned to Cambodia. It was Pol Pot who made the decision to allow her to arrive, not Ng Seri. However, Pol Pot asked Ng Seri to vouch for my ex-wife. And Mr. Ng Seri asked me to also vouch for her past. And I also wish to add to make sure we understand this. Later on, commanders from zones in Thailand and Malay did not decide on my fate. It was the center who would be able to decide anything relevant to me. Other people would not be in the position to make a decision on my case, although they perceived that I would be betraying the party. So it was Pol Pot who made the final decision. Mr. Ieng Sary was the one who asked us to do things, but these final words were from Pol Pot.
All right. Well, let me press you a little bit because you also mentioned the word center. So you're saying Pol Pot made this decision, but then in the context of your answer, you also indicated that your fate was within the hands of the center, if I understood your answer. And I need some clarification here. Can you make a distinction between Pol Pot and the center so we can understand it? Or is it one and the same?
To me, it's the same. The center would mean those cadres, and the cadres were under the supervision of the center, and the center meant Pol Pot.
All right, thank you. Now, again, sticking with this, and I want to clarify one point, because you seem to be saying this also. But I want to get the date right. And I'm referring to the transcript of August 6th, Khmer 00832153, French 00833090, and English 00833214. Here you're asked a question about DNUM, when it was created. And you state in your answer, because it appears that we're talking now past 1979, but given your answer, it is unclear what you are referring to. You say, after 1979, actually, what I want you to clarify is that Ieng Sary actually gave me instructions, but he did not have the authority to decide on the assignments that were tasked to me. Decisions were made at a standing committee level, and in particular by Pol Pot. So, my assignments were not done by Ieng Sary. It was ordered by Pol Pot. So Pol Pot first had to make the decision that ministers in charge would issue such orders or relay just such orders or instructions to the subordinate. And that's how the command hierarchy works. Now, in light of the question that was posed and the period in which the question, the contextual period of the question, were you referring in your answer here to post-79 or the situation as it was between 75 and 79 when you were at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
Witness, please wait. The prosecution, you may proceed.
La défense a bien précisé qu'il s'agissait.
The defense has indeed specified that this question was on the DNUM, but the witness's explanation relates to the period after 1979. So this question is not very clear because it is not related to what the witness said in the hearing of the 17th of August.
Mr. President, I'm reading the English version. It might be crystal clear in the French version, but from what I'm reading, it is not quite clear because he says, actually, what I want to clarify. And I'm asking for clarification. And was it like this between 75 and 79? And was the gentleman referring to that? Or was he referring simply to after 79? I'm not trying to suggest anything. I'm merely asking for clarification because later Your Honors will rely on the transcript in determining what are the facts in this case.
Witness, please wait. President, witness, can you recall the last question put to you by the counsel Michael Canavas? If so, you can respond. If you cannot recall, you may request the counsel to repeat his last question. The counsel would also like to remind the counsel that please make your questions short and precise, and try to avoid repetitive questions, and your questions shall be relevant to the facts determined by the chamber in the proceedings as part or as portion of the closing order.
សូមអរគុណលោកប្រធាន
Response. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request the counsel to repeat his last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Your Honors, and thank you, witness. I'm referring to your previous testimony of August 6th. We all have it in front of us, wherein you indicate after 1979, actually, what I want you to clarify is that Ingsari actually gave me instructions, but he did not have the authority to decide on the assignments that were tasked to me. Decisions were made at a standing committee level, and in particular by Pol Pot. So, my assignments were not done by Ingsari. It was ordered by Pol Pot. So Pol Pot first had to make the decision that ministers in charge would issue such orders or relay just such orders or instructions to the subordinate. And that's how the command hierarchy works. That was your answer. And now my question, sir, is, was that how the situation was in 1975 to 79, or are you speaking only about after 1979?
The situation applied in between 1975 to 79, and after 1979 it was still applied until the reintegration of Ingsari from the Khmer Rouge movement in 1996.
All right. Thank you. If we go on to a next area in your testimony, which I need some clarification. This is, again, on August 6th. Khmer 00832156, French 00833095, English 00833218. And here you were asked a question about trust. It actually, in Khmer, it would be the previous page. It would start with 00832156, where the words close collaboration and trust were used. And you say in your answer, however, there was a limit to the word, quote, trust, unquote, because there was not a 100% trust. It doesn't exist that way. Let's say it's 51%. That's just the percentage I could give. This is just for the sake of the understanding. The word, quote, trust, unquote, within the internal party was not really a matter. Everything was an evolution, was a resistant. And then you give an example. And I want to focus on this on this answer, this part of your answer concerning trust. So my question now is, what do you, to your understanding, what does trust mean during this period? And trust in the context of secrecy, especially.
Mr. President, as I do not fully understand the question, I'd like to consult with my duty counsel first. President, you cannot do that because your response is not the one that may incriminate you. The counsel would like you to clarify the testimony you made earlier before this chamber, whether you make a mistake or if you stand by that statement. You only can consult with your duty counsel if your response may incriminate you.
Phrase the question and see maybe it can be grappled with better. You've given us information, and we've heard from others, that secrecy was paramount. I believe it was 50% of the battle would be won by secrecy. And it's within that context that I want you to discuss and to explain to us the concept of trust.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your guidance. I find it difficult to respond when it comes to trust. We can only use it in a comparative sense. For instance, in the capacity as the chairman of the radio broadcast, there could be 3 or 4 candidates for that position, and the trust can be amounted to 51% up to 60 or 70%. But if there is only a single person with a total trust of 51%, that could be acceptable. Or, in regard to such a situation, someone could be appointed if that person was trusted only 48 to 49%, but if that person, or if the decision was decided by the party secretary and the order was relayed to his subordinates, who could be the chairperson of the radio station or the radio broadcast, and that's how it worked when it comes to the term trust. It was dependent on the biography of individual member, and it can only be used in that comparative sense. There are various examples that I can provide.
Okay, thank you. What about with information? Would somebody, I mean, the concept of trust, because you've told us that it's somewhat different during this period. Information that might be passed on from a higher up to a lower. Did the concept of trust come into play, particularly given the importance of secrecy and the repercussions for violating secrecy?
As I understand, the command works from the upper level to the lower level and to the lower level. And of course, there had to be a level of trust before the information can be relayed. And in this regard, it also depends on the line of the network. For instance, personally, I joined the resistance since I was a very young boy, but because I did not have a proper line or network, so I was not fully trusted. And let me apologize, maybe Kisampon trusted me more, but when it comes to keeping secrecy, he would be an expert in that area, because myself, probably I was a bit talkative, and usually the trust was bonded within the line or within the network of that individual, and that's how it worked. And that was the practical situation at the time. I suffered a great deal, but I still have a tremendous respect for those brothers, because the decision had already been made.
Okay, thank you. Now, if we could move on to another section of your testimony, and this would be in Khmer 00832156-57, French 00833096, and then in English 00833219-20. Here, you're asked about, or you're telling us that you were the director of information and propaganda of the MFA, and you were in that position until 1979, and then later on you state, Pol Pot assigned me to be the director of information. It was Kampuchea Information or Press Agency. Now, was it Pol Pot who assigned you to this position?
Yes, Pol Pot directly assigned me to that position. At that time, I went to see him together with Ieng Sary. Actually, I refused to take up that position because I had too many duties already. I'd like to say that at that time, in 1977 and 1978, I could only rest half an hour per day. That is from 4:30 to 5 a.m. But to me, sleeplessness was not a major problem. And you can observe that when I return from the testimony in this court, I go back home and I would go to bed immediately. Let me go back to the time, and let me apologize for the Cambodians who lost their children or parents. What I am saying here is the truth. And I personally lost some of my relatives, aunts and uncles. And for those brothers in their capacity as leaders, they also lost their relatives and family members. Pol Pot himself was very optimistic, and he told me that I could take up that position, and I could only work on 5 stories per day, and to me 5 stories per day was not really a major problem. So to sum up, Pol Pot personally assigned me to take up that position.
Thank you. And we see that part of your answer we can find on Khmer 00832159-60, French 00833100-01, and English 00833222-23. And I appreciate your answer, but I want to press you a little bit on this, in that because you seem to be giving us the impression that you had the right and authority to refuse an appointment by Pol Pot. And it somewhat contradicts what you've said earlier, that Pol Pot is making all these decisions, and in fact is speaking for the center. And so, if you could give us some clarification, were you in a position to decline an order by Pol Pot?
Frankly speaking, at that time, Ieng Sary advised me not to take up that position that will be assigned by Pol Pot. And I recalled that advice. At that time, I declined his offer because I personally knew Pol Pot very well. I was not really afraid of him. I knew him since I was young. And I only learned of what happened during the regime only after 1979. And if I were to know what happened during the regime, maybe I would not dare to refuse that offer. And usually I express my opposition to his opinions, for instance, during the tripartite negotiation. When he offered me the position, I finally accepted it, and if I did not accept it, it means I opposed him.
And what would that mean if you opposed him?
I would not know what would happen to me. I could not say. But maybe I would be all right because Ieng Sary supported my position. And if I were to be killed because of such opposition, that would be a bit too far, because I had known him for quite a long time. And for that reason, I feel so painful when Son Sen and his family were ordered to be executed by Pol Pot. I think that should not have happened. At least they should be spared, because they used to go through hardships for several years together.
All right, sticking with this same page that we're on, I want some more clarification, because you then go on to say that in this information agency was supposedly be within the portfolio of Ministry of Information and Propaganda. And just a point of clarification, was this the portfolio within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or within a separate Ministry of Information and Propaganda?
It was not under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Ministry of Propaganda. It was dealing directly with Pol Pot.
All right. Now, you have indicated that this consumed quite a bit of your time, and as a result, you were not getting much sleep. Can you please tell us to what extent you interacted with Pol Pot in relation to this particular position that you held?
As I recall, I communicated through the head of the party's branch, that is Mrs. So Sai, and I could not know how she relayed that information or contacted the Pol Pot. Thank you, counsel and the witness. The time is appropriate for a short recess. We will take a break for 20 minutes and return at 10 to 11. Court officer, could you assist the witness during the break and have him return to the courtroom at 10 to 11?
Soom chering ក្រោកឈរ